So Blizzard actually decided to do some class tuning before 10.1, and that is actually a very good thing. I'm Togray, and we are going to go over for the PvP nerfs and buffs, but also like some PvE changes as well. And we're going to talk about how it will change on a tier list base, I would say. So I will also show my tier list I have made yesterday and the movements I will predict coming Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever it goes live. But let's start right away by saying that the changes that they actually put out are quite interesting, but I don't think it is like meta shaking or whatever. Maybe one or two changes here and there. Now, let's talk about Death Knights. Unholy Decay got a sick buff, actually. You got a buff on Raise Dead, Army of the Dead, Scorch Strike, Clawing Shadows. We have a buff in PvE for Death Coil. It doesn't really affect for PvP. Soul Reaper, a buff. I think it's more of a PvE thing. In PvP, I tried to make Soul Reaper work, but the damage is not like super impressive either. And Gargoyle Strikes gets a buff overall because there was a bug where if you had too much haste, it made your Gargoyle Strike from your summon Gargoyle actually like skip the like a few damages here and there, and you would lose DPS. Right now you will have like a longer cast on Gargoyle Strike, but it does stack and you will have more damage from those gargoyles. So I think it's a huge buff to your CD, which is summon Gargoyle, but also outside of the CDs, having your pet doing 10% more damage. Your Army of the Dead actually just like everything. If you're doing a pet build, you will have Army of the Dead, will give you 10%. Same for Abomination, by the way. And you have Scorch Strike giving you 20% more damage as Clawing Shadows, and sometimes it can hit for quite a lot. It's just a shame that crits doesn't really do anything for Unholy Decay because it's not like surprising, but overall you will have more damage. Now, how does it translate it on a tier list? I would say I've put it in C tier, because I did feel like Unholy Decay wasn't that good going into 10.0.7, and right now I do feel like with those changes and the Retribution Paladin's nerfs, big spoiler, I do feel like it deserves maybe a B tier. Just maybe if the Gargoyle was bugged to a certain extent where you would basically have like a DPS loss. I think it could be even A tier, depending if the meta switches. But as long as Retribution Paladin actually is meta, it becomes like not super great. Also, you have a lot of like classes that can actually like destroy you on the defensive department. For example, an Arms Warrior that is going to crunch you most of the time. And in 10.1 it will be better, but right now it is not. So my prediction, B tier and maybe A tier, but I would say B tier on the same level as a Frost Decay. Balance Druid got a buff PvE wise for Star Surge. No big deal. And Denizens of the Dream got a damage increase by 20%. That is the fairy proc that you get, and it does somewhat alright damage, but it's not going to be like mind-blowing damage either. So it's a buff, but it's like more PvE kind of thing. And Guardian Druid got a buff, which is also translatable for PvP. So more health, more healing received by their mastery. I don't know if they are building mastery. I think they do build mastery. And Bark Skin, 45 seconds instead of 1 minute. I think RBGs players that are playing Guardian Druid will be quite happy with those changes. I don't think in Arena it will translate to more play rate. Evoker Preservation, they got a 3% buff to all healing, but also Living Flame buff by 15%, which is quite substantial actually, if they do get the time to cast a Living Flame. And Resonating Sphere now applies Echo to the first 5 allies it passes through. Anyway, that's a PvE change, don't get a lot of allies, except in RBGs or in random BGs. But in arenas, nothing will change. Hunter, all damage dealt by you and your pet abilities reduced by 3%. That's actually a somewhat alright nerf. It could be even more, to be honest, because right now the damage is quite substantial. But they want to see how the meta is going to shape after the nerfs and buffs from this patch, or probably in 10.1 as well with the crit nerfs. Survival Hunter, they get a PvE nerf on Mugu's Bite, but in PvP it won't be unchanged. Quite weird that it didn't really write it behind, like for example this one. But they wrote it in the developer's note because it was a bug. Actually, it's a bug fix. It was already applied for a previous patch, but it didn't really apply because of a bug. and now they will actually be applied. Protection Paladin got a huge nerf, and also for PvP, to be honest. Hand of the Protector now increases World of Glory's healing by up to 100% when cast on allies instead of 250%. So Protection Paladins basically will never be really played in 3v3. Maybe in solo shuffle because of the odd Protection Paladin matchup, but this is going to destroy any chance to be actually seen as a healer, and even as an off healer. I would even say that like a second healer in a comp, because you can play healer with a Protection Paladin and an Arms Warrior, for example. That's a comp that actually was played a few times ago. This will not exist anymore, because why would you play Protection Paladin instead of, let's say, a Retribution Paladin, for example? Priests, we got a Holy Nova damage increase. Now you can just AoE mount them your PvP players. No, that's not going to happen. You're just not taking Holy Nova either. So this is like PvE only. A Discipline Priest, we are aiming to bring Discipline's mana consumption in line with other healers. So they observed that it was running which is quite odd, because Holy Priest is running the most probably, and didn't get a buff to that. So it's quite weird. But anyways, they did buff the mana regen for Ender mana spendage from Disc Priest. But also Power Word Shield now absorbs 25% more damage for Discipline Priests, which is quite awesome, because right now your shields are top 2 healing, most of the time even top 1, and this is going to be very, very noticeable, especially with Rupture spams. So you're going to probably keep your allies safe, but it's the most problematic thing for this priest is probably topping your allies, especially in PvP. But I think if shield is very strong, it can be a good niche for them to actually be existing in this kind of meta. Renew also a base mana buff, I would say. You do spam Renew to get Atonement healing, but that's pretty much for PvE and not really for PvP, because you're not going to spam Renew all the time either. It's only at the start of the match, really. So there is a bug fix on Renew. Power Word Radiance now costs 4.5% instead of 5.5%, so I think it's a good substantial buff towards Disc Priest. I've put Disc Priest around the same level as Evoker's, a Preservation Evoker, which is A tier. I think with those changes, it might be A+ now on my tier list that I made yesterday. So if you want to check that out, just please check that out. But do have a mental note on the changes that will be live right now. I kind of predicted it that they are actually not going to change till 10.1, but right now they did. So we will see if there will be any application on the meta. I do think that the implications are very minimal, but I think my colleagues might think otherwise. Holy Priest gets a damage buff, which is quite nice. Marcus will be probably very happy. He played like a super aggressive Holy Priest on stream, but also on his videos, so I'm very happy for him. I do feel like spamming Smite is something that not a lot of Holy Priests will have the leisure to do that, especially in this current meta where Burst is somewhat lethal. So you do not really want to be casting Smite and getting silenced, and that's it, you're dead. So I don't know, but I think it's quite nice. I just want to have healers have some firepower, and this can help them. Although this is probably the change for PvE instead of PvP, but still we will be able to actually profit from that. Shaman got a healing nerf on like a restoration Shaman. They actually healed for too much, I guess, for 10.0.7, and they decided to nerf it by 5.5%. It is quite noticeable. It's all healing done. It's not like only one spell. It is really all healing done. So every single totem, every single riptide, every single hot from the riptide, every single healing surge, everything is going to get nerfed. So it's going to be noticeable. I think you might run out of mana now if you're spamming more heals. But right now, it is really an instant class, like an instant casted class, a Restoration Shaman. You don't really cast a lot of healing surges, and when you do, it's actually like an empowered one with a lot of healing power, so we'll see if it will change anything towards the actual meta. And then you have druid. I mean, I like the developers note, this is primarily targeted at improving cyclone's usability for druids in PvP. Well, if I'm reading that sentence, I'm actually thinking about haste buff on like cyclone, or a range buff, or anything, right, really. But particularly for Restoration Druid, as Cyclone's short range requires them to get close to their enemies. And then you have a change which has nothing to do with what they're writing, and they're actually just nerfing the mana cost. You're not going to get because of a Cyclone. That's never going to happen. It's not going to tip the scales because you casted 2 Cyclones in a game. The tip of scales is you're getting too close, you're casting Cyclone, you're either getting interrupted, or you're either getting stunned, feared, whatever, and then you have to back up everything with your CDs, and that's it. You are like empty, you don't have throughput anymore, and you die, and your enemies dies, your allies dies. But this will not change anything. Really not, because to be honest, you already have to Cyclone first to get like a mana cost, and that's not going to like happen too much in Soul Shuffle. And trees you can maybe with the right classes and right defensives, but often not a Cyclone is not going to get you so this changed a bit out of topic. It feels like a filler from Naruto or from Bleach, just not spot on. It's like out of the question, I would say. But anyways, Mistweaver monks got nerfed. Basically, right now, Mistweavers are S tier. They're like got here with Restoration Shamans. Very, very strong. And people are like suggesting that fist weaving is kind of dead because of those changes. I think it is not. It's a 12.5% damage decrease on the damage from Rising Sun Kick. You will feel like instead of doing a 60k crit, you will do 12.5% less crit, but it's not going to be like making you heal a lot less. It will make you heal a lot less, don't get me wrong, but often not you're over healing a lot of targets. It's not like you're healing like by a notch and you're surviving on thread. Basically, you are over healing people because of your damage that you can do with blockout kicks, which is copied from Teaching of the Monastery, which is also duplicated because of a stomp. So that's pretty much how I think currently about Fistweavers. I think it's still S tiers, especially in this meta. I think it's really because of the meta, right? If the meta was a bit different, with which a lot of classes, for example, like a caster cleave, wizard, or god comp, or whatever, those Fistweavers will just disappear because it will be very hard for them to connect. But right now in a meta where cleaving is the thing, especially in Soul Shuffle, you're still going to see a lot of Fistweavers with a lot of success, and you will get maybe now. I don't know, it's like divided by 3, so I don't know if the regen of the mana is going to be super interesting or not, but let's see how it pans out. For me, it's still S tier. Windwalker fixed an issue that copied blackout kicks from Teachings of the Monastery to deal 15% increased damage in PvP combat instead of the intended 30%, so it will do more consistent damage. I think it's a good thing, a good like bug fix. People will be happy, I think, about that. Holy Paladin got a buff. Woo! Word of Glory healing increased by 15%, so it will heal for a bit more, although it's not like fantastic. It is still going to be an instant good casted heal, which is a good thing for Holy Paladins, which is good for casted Holy Paladins, but also for the melee wings Holy Paladins. And then you have Holy Shock healing increased by 30%, which is like ×2 from what we had. So it's not going to be enormous, but it's going to be noticeable. I think it's going to be quite nice. I would say what they need, at least Holy Paladin, is probably some protection behind Divine Favor, because you had before a protection with the PvP talent where you were not interruptible, so you had to get to purge them before you interrupt, and right now you don't have that anymore. Maybe you could put that interrupt immunity or silence immunity towards that Divine Favor again, so we can actually like cast Flash of Light pretty much safely. But anyways, I think they're not going to move in the tier list except if the Retribution Paladin is going to be gone, because that's a direct counter. That's actually the issue. Huge nerfs on Retribution Paladin. I think that might make them a bit less god tier, but I still think if on my scale from my tier list you had like S tier then A plus, which is the arms warrior, for example. I think now they're like A plus. I think the nerfs are quite substantial enough to actually be noticeable. So Avenging Wrath now will only give you 10% more damage and healing, and also 10% crit from might. So it's only a 5% nerf, so I don't think it's like huge, but 10% is like, it's not a lot. But reminder, final reckoning, you have execution sentence, all those things are like kind of a modifier. Like the execution sentence is not really a modifier, but you add damage because of the duration, and the explosion is also some quite good damage, so you can see it as a modifier. That is the thing that is actually very lethal. I don't think like Avenging Wrath in a vacuum is the thing that is going to make you lethal. I think it's like all those modifiers are actually active on the talents trees, class tree, and also the spec tree, but also just like your spells have a lot of modifiers, and that actually helps them to actually deal a lot of damage even outside of their cities. Divine Protection now reduces damage taken by 10% instead of 20%. That's a good thing. So it means that they are more killable. So I think Retribution Paladin became the more targeted, most targeted spec now, at least in the cleave situation. I think Retribution Paladin will die a bit more, which is a good thing because you don't want to make them tanks, especially with the amount of damage that they have. So if you want to make them tank, you have to cut the damage off, and that's not something that Retribution Paladin really wants in general. So I think it's going to be a good nerf. Light Celerity, which is the instant flash of light, is going to get nerfed by 30%, so it will be only 20% increased healing on Flash of Light. I think there is maybe a world where you're not going to take that talent. Instead you will play probably with the Word of Glory, instant Word of Glory whenever you're low HP, that it gets a Word of Glory at 100% effectiveness. I think that's maybe a thing, and then you can still play with Flash of Light to heal yourself like behind a pillar. So I think that there is a world where you can play like that, but we have to see and test. Also, on like a separate note, I'm actually very happy for the nerf because it will give me some motivation to play Retribution Paladin. Right now, I do not want to touch it because it's flavor of the month till the death. It's really not fun. I do not like to be like surrounded by 10 other Retribution Paladins whenever I'm doing a random BG or epic BG or even arenas or whatever. I do not like that. I like to be a bit special. I like to be the underdog a bit. I like to be good, but I don't like to be like S tier good. Like for example, that's why I'm not really playing too much BM on server right now, because I feel like it's a bit too good in my opinion. Some people in the comments might say that I'm crazy, but I think it's very good. You have Sanctified Place now grants 50% less stamina, so I think it grants 20% stamina, and now it will give 10%, or it grants 10%, it will give you 5%. I don't remember. But it was a lot of stamina, so it will again lower their health pools and be more targetable. And avoidance is also nerfed, so AoE will do full damage on them. So the reminder, avoidance is actually very good in PvP because there is a lot of abilities that actually hit AoE, and that will reduce the damage even though it's not an AoE purpose. Like for example, a death blade dance, for example, on Demon Hunter, it gets like reduced damage on paladins regardless if it's AoE or not, because it does AoE damage. It is an AoE property on the spell, so that will be making Retribution Paladin a bit more squishy versus a lot of specs. Blessing of Sacrifice now transfers 20% of damage taken in PvP combat instead of 30%, makes them a bit less utile, but I do think it is still going to be good because it's a 1 minute Blessing of Sacrifice. Generally what you want to do is actually Blessing of Sacrifice the healer, for example, or your DPS, and you can also avoid a lot of like CC because of that. And in general it's always going to be good, and I think 10% nerf is fair, although I would like them to buff Holy Paladins by 10%, so it would be 40%. That would be actually very nice, but I don't know if they're going to plan to do that, but whatever. Demonology Warlock also got hit, so pretty much all the S tiers got hit except Arms Warrior, but Arms Warrior in my books was A+, so I guess There is some consistency to that. So they're tuning down the immutable high hit rate. So that's the talent that makes your Legion Strike, whenever it hits only one target, do 120% of that damage to the target. Right now it's going to be 60%. So what you also saw in the AWC, whenever the Demonology Warlock actually got CC'd and the Felguard was on the, for example, on Naj, he was hitting Naj for full value of the Legion Strike immutable high threat and pretty much like 1v1 Naj, and he had to run away from that pillar. It does a lot of damage, so it will be noticeable. It's also like stupid unavoidable damage, and that is going to be very good versus Demonology Warlock. Now I do not know how they are going to tune it, because I think Demonology Warlock is so weird in the approach on how they do damage. They're not like topping damage, but they are very lethal, and they are also very tanky. But reducing their damage that they can do as a Demonology Warlock will also reduce the self-heal from the Demonology Warlock, and that will make them more targetable. But that is pretty much my take. I think Retribution Paladin, if I have to take a guess, I think they might be A+ now instead of S. They are more targetable, they still have a lot of utility, they still have a lot of defensives, a lot of damage as well. So there's still a world where Retribution Paladin will be super strong. Demonology Warlock will still be S tier in my opinion because of the meta. If the meta switches, it might be A or A+, depending on situations. Windwalker, it's a bug fix. I don't know if it's very like noticeable. I did put Windwalker in A tier if I'm not mistaken. Holy Paladin, they're still going to be B tier in my opinion. This is not enough. I think they just need like straight rework. I think a rework on the Retribution Paladin scale would be quite nice. Mistweavers, they got nerfed, but I think it's still S tier because of the meta. Demonology Warlock and BM Hunters, that's free healing for you. But also in general, as long as it's cleaves, I think Mistweavers are still going to be very strong. And Druids unchanged. I think this is a joke of a change. Restoration Shaman still S tier, 5.5% is substantial, but not enough to make them move. Holy Paladin, I think Holy Priest they still are C tier. Now B tier. I think it's still B tier for me. It's B tier. Discipline Priest still A tier, maybe A+, depending on the value on the powered shield. And you have Protection Paladin, they're going to get destroyed. So if you had like a scaling for them on the tier list, I would say that it might be C tier. Now it's like completely D tier. And like you cannot heal as a Protection Paladin anymore. That's my opinion. Survivor Hunter unchanged, PM Hunter unchanged. Preservation Evoker A tier still. I don't know how substantial those buffs are. Boss Druid unchanged. Unholy DK for me maybe B tier now. But those are the tiers I would give to those classes. Please let me know what you think about those changes. I think it's quite good changes, to be honest. It's on the right direction. I don't know if they're going to do more before 10.1. 10.1 will be quite of a meta switch. It might be a dampening meta because of the CC changes, because of the damage changes, the crit changes. I think it's for the better. I think having dampening is not that bad, except when it's too long. If it's too long, it's not fun. If it's a bit dampening, so it means that if you're playing perfectly, it might be that the games are a bit longer. And if you're playing perfectly versus the other team, you're going to one-shot them, for example. That would be a good meta where you have ways to actually extend games and you have ways to actually shorten those games by outplaying the enemy team. That would be actually a very good meta, but I don't know if they are going to be capable to do that. And I'm actually excited to see what 10.1 will bring. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. Really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. We will catch each other very soon in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.